Hey, Mark. So it's great to have you on the show. Mark spent a decade selling B2B sales and building sales teams before founding Recapped. Recapped is a revenue execution platform that provides collaborative deal rooms for buyers, sellers, and partners. They raised 6.3 million from top VC firms like CRV and Zoom. Nearly profitable already and gearing up for a Series A. Mark, great to have you on the show. How about if you give us your own intro?
Yeah, appreciate it. Really excited. Looking forward to the conversation. I think you hit, the nail on the head for most of it, right? Before founding Recap, really spent kind of a decade selling B2B software as well as managing teams and building teams up from scratch, and really struggled with a couple key issues that I found in, okay, what happens after you book a meeting, right? Because for me, the light bulb that went off is that, as marketers, as sellers, as leaders, in go to market, we spend so much time and money getting that first meeting. But what happens when we actually need to manage the deal and enable our champions to be able to have those conversations and, work a sales cycle for 3 to 24 months? A lot of it's really hopes and prayers and a lot of emails and spreadsheets. And I thought there would be a better way of not only creating a consistent experience for the customer, but really just being able to manage everything that needs to go into it, from closing a deal to running a proof of concept to onboarding a customer even. And so Recap really just born out of personal frustration, but we've learned a lot. We made a lot of mistakes, and hopefully I can share some of that with other founders and anyone else that could learn from a million mistakes that we made on our end.
I like this a lot. So actually, I have, you say that many times it fails after the first meeting or when you need to start managing a deal. I don't know if it includes this, but oftentimes you get ghosted, just like on dating after your first pitch. How do you figure out what went wrong? How do you get feedback?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of components to it. First off, there's going to be a natural drop off, right? Some parts of it just they're not a good fit. I read a really interesting stat a couple of weeks ago that 95% of buyers are just not in the market today, and so really only 5% of people are ever really ready, and so we need to take that into account. Now, that being said, I think the biggest drop off happens for a couple of reasons. One, they're not a good fit. That's great. Get them out of there. Two, they didn't really understand what your solution was or why it's important to them. I think that's a really big one that most people can improve on. Three, I think timing just not great right now, so keep them in there and drill. But I think four too is, especially now, a lot of people are interested. It is a right good fit, but when they go to have those internal conversations and they take this to their boss or the CEO, whoever, they don't really know how to pitch your product in the story in a way that's going to really like deliver and align with top initiatives that they're really focusing on. And so enabling your champion to have those conversations when you're not in the room and arming them with the materials to be able to tell that story, I think that's also a really big reason why there's a lot of drop off, and something that sellers can absolutely fix pretty quickly and start seeing some really tangible results.
Nice. So, what does a good story look like? How do you know what's the perfect pitch today?
And I'm still figuring that out, but I think there's a couple components, right? First off, you really need to understand what is going on today, right? And I think a really great framework for this is why change, why now, why us, right? So first off, why do they need to change, and do they need to change? A lot, like we'll have some discovery calls internally where I'm like, hey, if you don't change, what's going to happen? And their answer is like, oh, well, we'll just continue doing what we're doing, but maybe we'll just be a couple percent behind where we need to be. I'm like, well, it doesn't sound like this is a hair on fire problem, so probably not a good fit right now. On the flip side, we have customers that come to us. They're like, if we do not change this, we are in danger of missing our numbers, which means we don't fundraise, which means the company is going to be out of business in 18 months. It's like, oh, okay, let's make sure we really fix that. All right, so that's the first one. Then kind of like obviously focusing on like why now, right, and then why us. But first, you need to understand about the business, and then you need to tie it to positive business outcomes that they can expect. Ultimately, no one really cares about you. They don't care about your product. They don't care about anything. We're all very, very selfish people as much as we try and work on it. And so deep down, we really need to focus on making them understand how this is going to make their life easier, how it's going to help them get more money, how it's going to help them make look good in front of their peers, get a promotion. One of those key things, that's what you need to really tailor the outcomes towards. And then to be able to give them all of the other proof points to help make that story really realistic ultimately, right? Hey, I just spoke with Daniel. He had this great product. He understands our pain. Here's kind of all the like what's on the line, and here's the cost of inaction. Here's how they're going to solve that, and here's 5 other customers that they worked with that really helped them, that we believe really were in similar positions like ours, and we have high confidence that this is going to help ultimately.
I really like that. A lot of people aim for a good meeting, but you're aiming for after the meeting and what he's going to do with people, internal stakeholders within the company. And I think that's a great place to aim for. The other day, I saw some advice where, everyone has their own objections within the sales meeting, and you kind of want to get those objections out there. And every time someone raises a certain point, you can treat each stakeholder as someone you can go after afterwards. So you can say
Absolutely.
to each one of them, if there are 5 people in the room, hey, you had question X. Let's talk about that. Here's some materials that we can help with, and start the process with each one of them and build a relationship with each separate stakeholder. So I really like that mode of thinking of what happens after the meeting. And I think a lot of sales leaders and a lot of startups still aren't there, and they still don't understand that.
Yeah, no, I love the way you phrase it, right? Because ultimately, like, no decisions are happening by one person right now. Even if a CEO is coming in and is like, we need this, they still want to make sure that this is the right tool for the team. They're not dictating something that has to be done. They want people to volunteer and to be actually on the same page. But if you're selling up, every single decision is getting scrutinized by the CFO, by budget, by procurement, by IT, by security. Everyone is trying to cut down tools. They're trying to cut down spend. And so you need to have those internal conversations. You need to multi-thread. You need to build out the persona matrix of what each person cares about and why they care about it, and really like tailor your pitch to that outside of those meetings. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, sales, so much of it is just project management. And as sellers, unfortunately, I don't think we're the most process driven or organized people usually. At least I'm not. Um,
I really like that approach. So let's take a step back and talk about. I know you're talking offline about product validation or continuous discovery. What's your approach to that?
yeah. So I'll talk about actually something that I wish we would have done a little bit differently. It probably would have saved us a lot of time. So we're very lucky in that like we built Recapped really just out of my personal experience. Like the initial screenshots and mockups that we built 5.5 years ago very much look like the platform today. Like um, it's more like we're 90% of the way there initially. But what I wish we would have done differently is I wish we would have worked more with design partners and found we think our ideal customer profile would have been, sat down with them, interviewed them, talked about the pains. It really just helped understand their day in the life, and then built a mock-up for them and essentially gone through the entire sales process with them, getting them to essentially sign a intent to purchase or even a sales agreement that it's like, hey, we're going to go build this in the next 3 months, but when we build it, you are going to buy this. And doing that 10, 20, 30 times, I think would have saved us a lot of time and money because we would have been able to get really serious feedback from people that we would want to do business with. And because as founders, we get a lot of people saying, "Oh, this is a great idea, love it," and then you ask them for $100 a month or $1,000 a month or $10,000 a month, and they look at you like you're crazy, and they're like, "Well, no, 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 it's cool, but it's not solving a pain for me." And so, like that is really what you need to be focusing on. If they're not paying for it, either they're not a good fit or you're not a good fit. And so, I would really try and focus on that in the early days, to before writing a single line of code, in my opinion.
So when you say that it cost you a lot of time and money, was it because you didn't do that process and then you started building something before there was validation and you realized there wasn't a need for that?
I think for us more so we got lucky in that again, we're building out of personal frustration. So like we kind of we were selling to myself, right? I was an ex VP of sales. Like we used me as kind of like the dream customer in a lot of ways, but we built things that I think could have been built better. or would have saved us more time later down the road where we went in and had to do V2s and updates and really kind of like change. I think we probably could have saved like, I don't know, 6 months to 12 months just by making the product tighter and simpler by being more closely attuned to our persona that we were selling to.
Nice. I like that. So we talked about validation at the POC stage. After you have your product out there, how do you continuously validate and understand what the right thing is to build?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a really great quote. I think it's from YCEO or somewhere, but whoever's closer to the customer is going to win. Between you and competitors. And I really love that way of thinking about it because if you do truly understand the pain and the impact that your customer has and that your solution has, you're going to have that empathy and you're going to be able to build better products, which means you'll be able to go to market, hopefully better. And so a lot of it, I think, is really just staying close to them. But um, once you're there, I think like there are some things that I wish we would have done differently as well around getting more customers, but you need to really, really stay close ultimately in the beginning.
So what does it mean to stay close? How do you get closer than your competitor?
Yeah. So one of our first customers, they were actually from my old hometown, and so I went down there. I told them I was going to be in town regardless, but we really flew down there just to sit with them, and I spent an entire day shadowing their users using our product. I was literally looking over their shoulder of how they were doing, what they were clicking on, what issues they were running into, and just sitting there and talking to them really uncovered a lot of things for us. And so we did that for, I don't know, three, four, five big customers in the early days. And that was really, really like, that was really impactful in the way that we built the product. The other piece too is um, we didn't, when we did a lot of user interviews and we let it be really open ended. And so on their side, like we tried not to guide them in any way. We would ask them questions that like just had them talking for 10, 20 minutes around like why this is important, what they care about. And then we put all those side by side and we tailored our messaging based off of what they said and what the commonalities were. And we literally used their own words to drive some of that repeat engagement in customers.
I like that a lot. Regarding your first point, it sounds to me like that would be a dream for any CEO to be able to look over his customers and learn more. How do you build such a good relationship with your customer?
Yeah, so I think as a startup, you always try and put on this front that like, hey, we're this bigger company. We have our shit buttoned up. Like, one thing I wish we would have done differently is really kind of own that. Hey, yes, we are a small startup. There's two people on the team right now, but guess what? Like, you're gonna work with the CEO and you're gonna have direct impact on the product. Like, I think I was a little embarrassed of that fact because I'd come from such a large organization. I used to work at Citrix where we had tens of thousands of employees. Um, and so be like owning that is something I wish we would have done a better job of. But I think, and that should be part of the selling point, right? It's like, hey, Daniel, like, I know we're small, but we're building this in a really unique way. We've got all this like competitive insight that no one else is thinking about this. Like, this is why we're going to be the big vendor in space. But hey, today, you're stuck with me as the CEO, and like, I'd love to sit down and like really understand what your users are doing. Like, can I come in and shadow you guys for the day? All right, grab some donuts, show up, and everyone loves to give feedback and be listened to. I think ultimately, and so like leverage that.
So I can definitely understand the pro from their side of things, but what about the cons? What about their worries like are these guys going to exist tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean it's hard, right? I think the customers that are going to appreciate it are going to be the early innovators and early adopters and that want to be ahead of the curve, right? If they only invest in tools that are like the Salesforce of the world that have been around for 25 years, you're probably not a good fit for them anyways. You should be talking to other customers, right? So I think as long as you have the credibility, and if you're lucky and you went out and fundraise and you have capital in the bank, or you're bootstrapped and you're almost profitable, like use that to get over those objections, in my opinion.
Nice. My next question is about, you mentioned this offline, a product advisory council. What is that and how do you use it to your benefit?
Yeah, so we did this in the early days. I wish we would have done it differently. So what I would do is either while you're building and mocking up the product in the first place, or you already have something and you're going to market, build a product advisory council, which is really just a group of ideal customers that you would want on board, right? These are the people that you did the interviews with. These are customers that you'd want to sell to, right? So let's say I want to sell to a CRO at Dropbox. Get someone that looks like them, get them on board as a product advisory council where maybe you meet once a month, once a quarter, and it's either with them or with the entire group at once to have them literally give you feedback on your vision and what you're building. I would also give them equity shares in your company so they feel investment or they feel invested. And I would leverage them and their network like crazy to get them on as influencers on LinkedIn and to help drive market awareness for what you're building because that will help further drive the flywheel.
I really like that a lot. I can tell you that a lot of startups that I've seen really have a difficult time just getting enough meetings and getting enough feedback. So I like that rinse and repeat approach. So how do you go about building such a thing? Like you said, you provide equity. What other things do you do to maintain that relationship and get that good feedback going on?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, these should be people that you'd want to do business with and you enjoy talking to, someone you look up to, someone that you really respect. I think that's just like table stakes. Um, in terms of how you do it, like it's the way we did is we just literally reached out to people in our network. We reached out to people on LinkedIn. Anyone that engaged or had something really interesting to say on like the category that we're building or the problem that we're solving, I'd reach out to them and like, hey, I'd love to get your feedback on what we're building, and let's have a conversation. And if that conversation went well, say, listen, would love to bring you on as a product advisory council. Right? Very few people actually ever do this or get a chance to be part of something at the ground floor, and it feels really good to give your feedback and to help um, help a small startup build something really cool. Right? It feels great. There's a lot of pros on both sides. So it's I wouldn't make it a bigger deal than it needs to be. Right? Like we have 20 partners that we've given equity to, and they've been incredible.
I really love that. I think a lot of what you do actually includes a lot of deep relationships in the way that you approach things. So it seems to me like you approach things in a lot less transactional way and a more of a harvester way. Like, let's slowly build this relationship and see how it can have mutual benefit. And I love that a lot. I wish more founders would do that. And I think a lot of people can learn from your approach. Let's talk
Yeah.
about tactical ways to get more customers. You have your few customers on board. What are your top three ways to get the next customers?
Yeah. Um, and to your earlier point, I appreciate that. I think life is too short to work with assholes, and ultimately, like everything comes down to relationships. Uh, it it's just so much more fun when you get to literally work with people that you admire and that are friends, and that you would go and have a beer with or whatever. So we always made that kind of just front and center to everything we do. The regarding getting more customers, when you do get an early customer, maybe it's your first, second, third, it doesn't matter. I would really first off sit down with them and help build a business case and a case study, more importantly, of their before and their after, and use that to tell a story of their success. And you just need one to get started with, right? And it could literally be your only customer, and you go from one to two. But more important than 40% close rates and we close deals 30% faster. Like, yes, that's important, but what people really care about is this customer in a similar position as me? Are they the same size business, right? Like, are they Salesforce and I'm a two-person startup? Like, so it doesn't matter, right? What our success isn't aligned. And what is the before and after? And really focus on telling that story. hey, we worked with so and so customer, they're similar size to you. Here were the problems that they had when they came to us. These were the goals that they wanted to accomplish, and here's why we helped them get there. Boom, 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 boom. All right, and really be able to tell that convincing narrative. That will take you really, really far. Um, we waited too long to do that.
What is a great customer testimonial or case study? What does it look like to you? Is it a video? Is it text? How do you leverage it? How do you know if it's working?
The answer is yes. There are people that consume content in a variety of different ways, right? Some like long form, some like TikTok videos. You really need to repurpose pretty much everything you do as a startup to make yourself look bigger and to get your awareness out there. So an interview should be a long form video. It should be a blog post. It should be a PDF that you can send out. It should be an ad that takes people to a landing page. It should be small little clips that you take up and you post on LinkedIn. You can repurpose the same piece of content 20 different ways, and you should. Um, so, yes, I think ultimately is like, yeah, you need to do it, right? So, for example, we have a couple case studies going live right now. It's a blog. At the top, there's a 4-minute video summarizing pretty much everything. Within each section, there's going to be 30-second to a minute little clips that tell you more about the customer being interviewed and what they were struggling with and what Recap really did for them. That's not to say that's the best process, but that's what we're doing.
So basically, there's a 4-minute video and there's a section, and then it's a bunch of shorts after that where each
Yeah.
one is around a feature or something like that.
Or more so around a pain or theme, right? So, hey, they struggled with standardizing their sales process. Here was the before, here's the after, here were the impacts. And then each section will have its own pain, really, right? Because you also have to put yourself in the shoes of your prospect that's reading this, if they're even reading it in the first place. They're not going to be, they don't care about your features. They don't care about your startup. They don't care about your product. They care about their pain points and what that consequences of those are. So I do fully believe that tailoring it to that is the way to get more attention, but who knows?
I like that a lot. Let's go back to the ideal sales process. You're building a company around a great sales process. So, what does a great sales process look like? How, we talked about often people ghost you after the first meeting. You did say 95% of people aren't relevant. What does a healthy process look like from the storytelling to the follow ups? What's a bad example and a good example?
Yeah. So I think there's really two perspectives that you need to take into account and two really big themes that you need to think about. All right. First off, one, from as a seller, right? And from our perspective, there are a million things we can't control. We can't control the market. We can't control competitors. We can't control our own product, right? Sometimes because it takes time to build it. The only thing that we can really truly control is how well we execute the sales process and the experience that that provides for our buyers, right? How easy it is for them to buy. So from our perspective, you need to really focus on the science of selling, which in my opinion is about 80-90% of sales. 10% is the art. It's like how great you are on the phone and how lovable you are and charming. Like that doesn't matter, right? So as you're a leader, you need to build for the average. You can't rely on heroes coming in and just being incredible sellers. That's not scalable. And so being able to really focus on standardizing your process, making it repeatable, making it easy, making sure that you follow up at the right time, you're easily available, and you are seen as an expert and a consultant through and through so that you can help guide your buyers.
Let's
That's
get
the first
tact.
piece.
Let's get tactical. How do I do those points?
So, first off, you need to make sure you're multi threading and bringing in the right people. You need to make sure you're asking the right questions. So, again, uh, really figuring out like why do they care about this? And then taking that 4 levels deeper. Right. So, sometimes even just asking like why 20 times over and why is that important 20 times over will get you there. But being able to, so qualify and disqualify deals, asking the right questions, sharing the right content, creating a go live plan or a mutual action plan of what next steps need to happen and what success actually looks like for them to see success, not just for the deal to close. Being able to really just make everything as smooth as possible for them.
Cool. So let's talk about the first meeting. You're on the call, you're the account exec, you're the founder, whatever you want to be, and you have to start asking some questions. What does a great first meeting look like? Can you give an example of some questions? You can tell anything you'd like to.
Yeah, for sure. So first off, I think um, you need to come into this as the expert. Most people, buying is harder than selling. And most people are looking to someone to help consult them and guide them and help them answer questions that they don't even know that they had. So I like to come in with a hypothesis. Hey, Daniel, I appreciate you scheduling time. Um, here's I did some research. Obviously, I know very little about your company. I'm hoping to learn more, but there's a million reasons why we're not a good fit. But I want to learn a little bit more and see if we are. And if we are, we could continue. And if not, I'll help point you in the right direction and give you some resources. But here's my when people come to us, similar size company as you, here are usually the challenges that they're struggling with. So I have a hypothesis that maybe you're probably in the same boat. XYZ. Does that align? Like, am I missing anything? Am I completely off base? And automatically you're painting yourself as an expert just from going to that. It's like, oh wow, Mark has worked with a company similar to size as me. He understands. Yes, I struggle with those three things, but there's also this other fourth thing that's actually really significant for us, that's unique to us, that let me go ahead and now you're having a really great conversation. All right. A lot of people can use slides to help tell that story as well. I'm a really big fan of slides. We'll use it to drive kind of like visuals in the beginning and to really, again, help tell that narrative. So that's that's the foundation of it. And then it's really asking the questions that you have, right? Like, don't be afraid to ask hard questions. You need to be able to understand, can you actually help them? And a big reason why you're asking those questions isn't to get the answer, it's to get them to say it out loud. So, which is really key, I think, as a seller, right? Um, you may know what they're going to say, but getting them to say it is incredibly powerful from a psychological standpoint. And once they say it, as humans, we want to be consistent. So even if you know the answer, there's probably still a lot of benefit in getting them to actually say that answer out loud. And then after that first call, it's really setting next steps. Here, okay, great. I'm glad you answered these questions. Thanks for being so transparent. Um, I'm really excited because you seem like a really great fit based on XYZ. Here's how we usually work with customers of your size. Here's what I'd recommend as next steps. We schedule a deeper product demo. You bring in your leadership team, you bring in IT, whoever, and I'll build something out for us that's custom. We'll go through it and we'll make sure that this is a good fit and we'll take it step by step. After that, we usually run a POC where that's 2 weeks where you get a free trial, etc. How does that align? Okay, great. Let's actually put some of these dates down on paper and go from there.
It reminds me of the pickup world a lot. So at the beginning, you want to demonstrate high value and almost give the impression that you're not sure you want to work with the customer. Like you're the one who's doing the qualifying or disqualifying. And after the customer is like, no, 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 I do really need this. The pain is strong there enough. I do need you. Then you're like, okay, I think we can work together on this. But it's
Yeah.
kind of like polarizing the customer or the prospect.
Yeah. So you're gonna make me go on a huge tangent, but it is absolutely very similar. Sales and dating have a 90% parallel. Like they're so similar, right? And if you get good at one, you're probably going to get good at the other, because it's so much of it too, and so much of it goes back to just self-respect, right? Like, hey, I need to make sure that I'm not wasting my time on something that's not going to go somewhere, right? And so, like, let's have a good conversation. Like, yes, I have a solution. Yes, you might be a good customer, but I need to make sure that that's even the case because I don't want to sell something to you that you then have a bad experience with. Now you tarnish me on LinkedIn, and now all of a sudden, like, no one's happier, right? So having that self-respect and having those boundaries is really, really important. And I think most founders and most sellers are not disqualifying enough deals and enough prospects because you need to get really, really good at solving a very, very specific pain for a very, very specific group of customers, and then you can expand. Don't start too broad.
My next question is, how do you know how macro to go and how micro to go, right? You can have a pain at the feature level, you can have a pain at the macro level. I need a sales platform, or I need to be able to do this in 3 clicks. It's so easy to get lost in both the problem and the solution. How do you create a great framework to walk the customer through?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it depends on who you're talking to. And the as micro as you get on your demos is the level that you're going to get relegated to. So if you like, for example, you're talking to a CFO or CRO, they don't give a shit about how many clicks it takes to do this. What they care about is this going to help me hit my numbers and is going to give me visibility into seeing my pipeline, right? And then yes, you can really quickly talk about, well, we do it in 3 clicks, and that's why we work with so and so companies. Now, if you're talking to the end user, let's say an account executive in this case, they're probably going to care about how many clicks because that's what they're thinking about. They want to make sure their day is important. So I would structure your demos differently based on who's on it and building out a matrix essentially of on a persona basis. What are their challenges? What are their alternatives? What is the value that they get from this? Why do they care? What is the impact? What happens if this goes well for them? What does that mean for their career? Those are things that you could literally just build, and you can have GPT help you build it. But that's something you should take into your demo as well. So we have 3 different slides. We have 3 different talk tracks based on if it's end user, manager level, or senior leader.
So even if we go into one of the personas, let's say a CRO, and you're still, you didn't hit product market fit yet, you could still attack plenty of different pain points, right? So how would that process look like for you? Would you start out with, I want to test out these 3 pain points and run an experiment for a month each? How would you approach that?
Well, I think if you've been doing the interviews and you have some design partners and you have a product advisory council, you should have a pretty good idea of where to go in the first place. All right. Um, if you don't, I mean, you could be very candid, right? I think, like, okay, I'm putting myself in the shoes of a founder who has one customer and we don't know if it's repeat or if we got lucky or if it's a fluke or what. Um, I would be very candid. I would say, listen, we're still like, I don't want to lead you. I have my assumptions. We've been working with a couple companies. Here's what they really cared about. And I would parrot some of the things that you heard from even just that one customer. And it's like, do any of those resonate with you or are really top of mind for what you're thinking of? Here's 3. They might say all 3 resonate. They might say, actually, I don't really care about any of them except for that one, but that one is really important because it's stopping us from hitting goals. So like, have an open dialogue and have an open conversation, right? And you're probably going to lose some deals in the early days, and learn from them, right? Okay, well, hey, I brought these 3, that didn't work. Let me try that again on 3 more calls. Okay, 3 calls later, none of these 3 pains really resonated. Let me go back to my first initial customer and talk to them. And it's like, hey, I had the same conversation with 3 other CROs. They didn't care. Why do you think that is? Right. And again, that's where the relationship really matters because you they need to want to help you ultimately.
Nice. So we're wrapping up right now. What are your last tips that you would give to founders in early stage?
Ship quickly. Don't worry about making anything perfect. It's not going to be, and you're probably wrong in the first place anyways. So just get something out quicker. Charge significantly more than you're charging today. We've increased our prices, I think, 10 times at this point, and we're about to increase it again. We're about to double it, actually. Um, and really focus on the buyer experience and making life easier for your buyers. It's not a sales process. It is like your sales process should be tailored to the buyer journey. And so every friction point, every drop off, every hurdle that you put for your buyer is going to bite you in the ass.
Thanks so much, Mark. I learned a lot. Great having you on. Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah.
How
Thanks for the
can,
time. Appreciate it.
one last thing, how can people reach out and learn more?
Yeah. Email me directly, mark@recapped.io, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to do a better job of posting and sharing some of this content. I hate doing it, but it's apparently there's a lot of value in it for others. So I'm trying to share that as much as possible. But LinkedIn is really easy to find me.
Thanks so much, Mark.